virtual pitch session. We have some exciting pitches to listen to and wonderful feedback from our amazing judges. I'm your host, Davina, and I work on the writer development team here at ScreenCraft, and I'm super excited to be here. ScreenCraft's mission is to foster the careers of emerging writers and filmmakers by providing inspirational and insight into the craft of screenwriting and the business of Hollywood. Today, we will be listening to 8 pitches from our talented writers and getting live feedback from our incredible judges. The judges will then leave to deliberate, and after they return, we will announce the second runner-up, first runner-up, and grand prize winner. The 8 finalists tonight were selected from more than 8,000 global entries after multiple rounds of pitching based on the strength and clarity of their presentation in under 3 minutes. So congratulations to all of the finalists already for making it this far. So I will introduce our lovely judges of today. We have Davina Hefflin, who is a TV literary agent at Verve. Jennifer Katz, who is a manager of TV development and production at Searchlight Pictures. Kyra Jones, who is award-winning screenwriter, Black queer feminist, artist, and educator and advocate. Kevin Bachar, who is an Emmy-winning WGA documentary writer and director. Kylie Eaton, an award-winning writer-director whose work has been featured on Gunpowder and Skies, Dust. And lastly, Sean Collins Smith, an award-winning journalist and screenwriter. Thank you so much for our judges for being here. And I will introduce quickly our first pitcher, who is Kai Durkin. 3 things that excites Kai and her co-writer Anna is bringing diversity to speculative fiction, inventing complex, dynamic, and engaging characters, and blending genre conventions to craft playful and unique stories. So take it away, guys.
Thank you for having us. So our show is called In Sheep's Clothing, and it's a queer teen drama crossed with supernatural horror. Think Buffy meets Killing Eve.
It's set in Ramsborough, a fictional Scottish town secretly run by werewolves.
Our first protagonist is Aidan Shepherd. She is the youngest daughter of the pack leader, and she is hot-headed, impulsive, but ultimately well-meaning.
This is a world in which adult werewolves have to kill and eat someone every winter solstice or be trapped as a wolf forever. The solstice is coming up and happens to fall on the same day as Aidan's first transformation.
Which brings in our second protagonist, Niamh Gellert. She is classic type A, and she is also part of a secret werewolf hunting organization. She's gone to the town to investigate for her first solo mission.
After a misunderstanding at school, Aidan thinks Niamh is a bully and leads her into the woods to eat her on the solstice, but panics when she realizes Niamh is actually nice. Niamh runs as Aidan transforms, and Aidan eats an innocent passerby, marking the end of the pilot.
So in the early season, we really want to contrast the horror world with the school world. Aidan thought that being a werewolf was going to be like being a superhero, but now she feels like a monster. Niamh wants to prove herself by slaying Aidan single-handed. At school, their friends misread the tension and want to set them up on a date.
Things take a darker turn when a rogue werewolf starts killing townsfolk, and Aidan and Niamh have to team up and call a temporary truce to investigate.
The truce evolves into a buddy detective dynamic, and slowly the two start to fall for each other, and eventually they kiss.
Aidan finds out that the rogue werewolf is Ross, a classmate who has been turned against his will and cannot control his hunger. She betrays Niamh and tells Ross to leave town.
In response, Niamh resumes hunting Aidan. She's also ignoring calls from her mentor Caroline, so Caroline comes to town and leads Niamh on a hunt. She orders Niamh to kill Aidan, and when Niamh refuses, Ross ambushes them both. In the ensuing chaos, Caroline and Ross are killed. Aidan then smuggles a traumatized Niamh off of the shepherd's property.
When Caroline doesn't check in, more hunters come to town. They capture Aidan and recruit Niamh, unaware of their previous relationship.
So in the final episode, the hunters begin torturing Aidan for information about her pack, but Niamh busts her out. Aidan has an opportunity to slaughter the hunters, but she runs away instead.
The girls end the season separate but safe, And that's the end of season 1 and the end of our pitch. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you so much for listening.
All right, so judges, take it away. Give them feedback that you would like to let them know.
Hi, y'all did a great
Hi.
job. I think that it's such a fun idea. We definitely need more queer vampire stories. I just started watching Interview with a Vampire, and it's like one of the best things I've seen. So like bringing that into the YA space. Mwah. You did a really, really great job of explaining the plot. I think you could, when you do this pitch again, go into the characters a little bit more and what makes them unique, because TV is so character driven that people tune in because they fall in love with these people that they're seeing on screen. And also, like, if you want to talk a little bit more about yourselves and what inspired you all to write this, I think that would be really helpful as well. But it seems like a really fun series.
Thank you so much. We've watched last year's pitch, and it's great to talk to you. We really loved your pitch last year.
Thank you so much. I loved your pitch too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought you guys had a really solid pitch. I loved that you had this back and forth banter that flowed really endlessly, and you guys were able to like very strategically get us like from the pilot into the series. Like you guys were really, really smooth. So really enjoyed your pitch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. I really liked the twist on the werewolf story where they have to kill someone every solstice. You said I was just talking to someone about how there's so many twists on like vampires and all these different sort of mythological creatures, but you don't see a lot of werewolf like reinterpretation. So I think that felt really fresh, and you know, that fun take on YA fantasy I think was great. And like everyone said, like I felt very confident that you knew sort of exactly what all your story points were. I personally would have liked a little bit more on the tone side, hearing a little bit more about what you would put into that, but overall great job, and it sounds like a really fun show.
Yeah, I agree. I think your tone, I would have liked to see a little more of the tone and maybe the emotional underpinnings of some of the characters and a little less plot. But I mean, it was fun. It was great. I love the back and forth ping pong energy of you two. It's like it's infectious, and I can tell that you love this story, which is one of the worst sins people commit, is they're telling a story and you're like, do they care about this? This seems boring to them. So I really enjoyed it. Nice job.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your feedback, and great job, Kai and Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so let's see where I left off. Okay, so Nicole laughs harder, refuses to display either sentiment on a piece of bombard in her living room, and is easygoing and forgiving unless she hears someone disparage the boy band goodness that is the New Kids on the Block. And most of all, Nicole is grateful and humbled to have the opportunity to participate in ScreenCraft's virtual pitch competition. So take it away, Nicole.
Thank you, Kylie. I'm Nicole James Burgraff, and thank you so much for the opportunity to pitch my comedy feature, Mick and Tony. Now, the idea for this film came up from a conversation I had with my childhood best friend about how freaking hard it is to make new friends in your 40s. Now, when we meet Mick and Tony, they're living their best perimenopausal life. They're childhood best friends and notoriously quirky. In fact, some around town have referred to them as a bit much. Their personalities perfectly mesh, and their differences complement each other. Mick is bold and uncompromising, and Tony is insightful and practical. They live together, work together, and enjoy a diet of Lunchables and margaritas together. Neither seek out romantic love, but they do enjoy the physical company of a man once a week for 30 minutes, 45 if they've run out of batteries. But when a doctor tells Mick she's about to trade her toe ring for a toe tag, she sets out on a covert mission to find Tony a new best friend. Now, Mick keeps her terminal diagnosis a secret from Tony because she doesn't want her remaining days to be reduced to this dewy wind beneath my wings fever dream. Now, Mick's plotting to find Tony a new best friends really takes the women out of their element. They find themselves in places like a musty church rummage sale a really sketchy pyramid scheme party, and a book club that is so not suitable for work. Now, they meet potential friends, but Tony's not interested, and Mick grows increasingly worried because she knows time is running out. Meanwhile, Tony's at first annoyed with Mick's sudden interest in meeting new people and doing new things, but then it reaches a crisis point where Tony starts to question why her friendship is no longer enough for Mick. Tony confronts Mick. Mick must reveal her truth, and Tony is devastated. Soon after Mick dies, Tony leaves the hospital alone when blammo, an ambulance careens out of nowhere, kills Tony instantly. She ascends to heaven where it's everything the women could ever want. 90s boy band music, unlimited Lunchables, and most of all, each other. Mick and Tony is Beaches meets Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion. Now, I wrote this script for my fellow Gen X women. We want to go to the movies and see ourselves on the screen, but not as the trope of the middle-aged woman. Mick and Tony are body positive. They're happy with their life choices, and not once do they ask to speak to a manager. Mick and Tony is my comedic love letter to the power of female friendship. Thank you.
Wonderful job, Nicole. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any feedback?
I thought that was hilarious. I loved your energy. I loved your jokes that you had planted in. And there was no room for letting my thoughts wander because you were so captivating in your pitch. That was a really good job.
Thank you kindly. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I loved it. It cracked me up. Great job.
Yeah,
Agreed.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I think it was really funny, but I think you balanced it well with like the heartfelt aspect of it as well. So great job.
Yeah, it was heartfelt, and also I was just gonna second the energy. There was so much energy there. It was perfect. It was a great pitch.
Yeah, every time the tone of your pitch matches the tone you're going for in the piece, it's a really good thing.
Thank you so kindly.
Hey, thank you so much, Nicole. Wonderful job.
So appreciated. Thanks, guys.
All right, bye. Okay, so let's bring up our next picture, Faye Amara. So Faye sent in the most influential person to them is their dad. Faye's dad is the biggest influence and the reason for their discipline. He instilled in her to search further for the truth in Black history and filled their mind with stories of Mary Bowser, Ruby Bridges, Shirley Chisholm, Black Wall Street, Clotilde, and so many more. He also has made the best cheese grits, bonus points for Dad. Wonderful, I love that, Faye. Okay, all right, Faye, you can take it away.
All right, like I said, I am thrilled to introduce you to my hour-long, 6-part dramatic limited series, Mary Redacted, the story of a spy who poses as a slave in the Confederate White House during the height of the Civil War. Most people don't know this about me, but I come from an interracial family. My dad is Black and my mom is white. I also come from a very small white town, which means the bullying, the fighting, the exclusion was unreal. But when people didn't know me, they would do and say things because they assumed of what I was and what I wasn't. Mary lived that same paradox, being able to pass as something that she wasn't. People would do things and say things in front of me that they wouldn't if they knew where I came from. Elites, commanders, generals all said things to and in front of Mary, assuming that she was a dull and dutiful slave and not the creative, quick-witted, intelligent woman that she was. The story of Mary Bowser is an example of Black history that has been erased, but in this case specifically, redacted. Mary's master, Bet, created personas for all of the slaves in the spy ring, and they attempted to pull off the biggest charade of all time, infiltrating the Confederate White House. Simultaneously, Mary is aiding the largest American prison break, creating ciphers, creating correspondence, and eventually opens up a school of literacy for all former enslaved. The series is set in 1860, which puts Mary at 19 years old. So This woman, and let's be real, she's a kid. This kid is standing behind decorated soldiers, looking over their shoulder, memorizing their correspondence, writing it in a cipher that she created, putting it under bread in a bread basket, and passing it out the door in front of everyone's nose. This series is set to modern day hip hop and rap to connect time through culture and amplify that the series is the truth of self-made, the cleverness and excitement that is Sherlock, and the boldness that is Harriet. As I said, this story is the truest account of the story of Mary Bowser, and that's because I've researched history books, journals, diaries, deathbed accounts of people involved, maps, and ciphers to tell their story how they would have wanted it to be told. Mary Redacted is a love letter to American history, but it's not blind love. It is the correcting and tough and truthful kind of love. Thank you.
Great job, Faye.
Thank you. Sorry I butchered that.
No worries. No
You
worries.
didn't butcher it.
I
It
have
happens.
patience. And Kyra, I watched your pitch from the last series, and I have to say, like, your project has been I've been following you ever since, and it's an honor to be in the same room as you. And it's really great to meet all of you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And I just wanted to say that was a great pitch. I didn't know about Mary Bowser. I love the personal connection that you had to it. You know, being biracial and hearing all these racist things that people wouldn't say in front of somebody who looks Black, which is like such an interesting way into the story. So I think you did a great job. I would absolutely watch this series.
Thank you so much. Yeah, especially because I don't look like somebody who would write it.
Right.
And I know that, but you know, it's about the intricacies between Black and white people that aren't normally said if you look a certain way. It's only that specific like paradox that I crossed about literally looking like something and not. And that's where she lives, just on the other side.
I really enjoyed that pitch. I'm biracial myself, so a lot of that spoke to me in my existence. I grew up in Richmond with like Confederate statues all around me, which was just like random. Virginia. They're right. And so, and I've heard her story before, but I didn't know a lot of the intricate details that you shared. So A, I would absolutely love to watch that. B, I'd love to read it. I'd love to see kind of like what the style is of it.
Yeah, Kylie deck is done.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. It's a really nice job.
Thank you so much, guys. Again, I appreciate your patience. I'm a nervous Nelly, so.
I get the same way during pitches, so I totally feel you. I just wanted to say I thought you did a great job answering the 3 questions of why this project, why now, and why are you the right person to tell the story. You really integrated that into the pitch well, so I got a great idea of that. So really good job with that.
Why now? Because it's long overdue, girl. Like,
been on yesterday.
Especially in Richmond, Virginia. I'm sorry to take up y'all's time, but like people lived in like half blocks from each other. So I'm like reading these history books and I'm sweating. This stuff happened 160 years ago. And I'm like, these people are right behind each other doing this stuff. It's, they're nuts. They're crazy and they're amazing. The story should definitely be told. So thank you guys. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Faye. You did an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so I will bring up our next pitcher, who is Lou Lennox. 3 things that excites Lou Lennox as a writer is to get to create worlds that she didn't have access to as a child, have the chance to bring visibility to authentic characters from their community and the diverse world they inhabit, and also to engage with big ideas, systemic oppression, proximity to power, queer joy in intimate, tangible ways centered on the humans that are impacted by them. So take it away, Lou.
Awesome. Wonderful to see you. And I'm really excited to talk to you about my feature film, Paris to the Floor. Ever since I was little, I have always been obsessed with dance movies. From Dirty Dancing to Center Stage to Step Up, these films didn't only serve as an escape, but also as inspiration. I danced all the way through high school. And it's my experience as a queer body in these spaces that inspired Paris to the Floor. Paris to the Floor follows ballroom dancing duo Diana and Sydney. They've been dancing together since they were 10 years old as a same-sex pairing, because of course there aren't enough boys in ballroom. But now they're 17 they're aging out of their division, and that means new partners. It also means coming to terms with their incredibly complex relationship. Diana starts to realize that her feelings for Sydney may not be 100% platonic, and she's forced to grapple with the very real and very queer question of, is this friendship or is this romantic love? Sydney comes to realize the gendered expectations that have been put on their body through dance. And with a new partner, they're able to rekindle their love for the art form and come into their identity as a non-binary dancer. They don't have to give up this thing they love just because of their history with it. So this film obviously stands on the shoulders of Center Stage, of Step Up, but it also stands in a new tradition of media like Love, Simon and Heartstopper. Media that centers authentic queer experience, but with a light touch, centering joy and softness and light. And this is the kind of representation that queer teens need today. When queer teens see themselves in the media and in the news, they see their bodies as political battlegrounds. They see their identities being mandated. They're seeing their narratives stripped from their libraries. Pairs to the Floor is a feature film that celebrates the complexity of queer identity and a variety of queer identities with dance numbers and sparkles. Thank you.
So good, Lou. That was amazing. Thank you. Anybody have any feedback?
I really like the personal connection to it. I think it's always really great when you start with that. I think like getting a little bit more sense of like the plot like might have been a little helpful. So maybe like just amping that part up a little bit as you're sort of refining the pitch.
Yeah, I agree with Jennifer's notes on the plot, but I love the world that you've built and that you've created, and I love the characters that you're playing with. They seem so real as you were talking about them, like I might have known them when I was going to school, and I loved that. So you definitely created a nice depth of character and world there.
Yeah, just curious. Again, I love the pitch. I love the energy. What is the story arc? What are we heading to? Where are we going?
Well, what we're heading to is them figuring out kind of who they are in these new roles. So really what we're seeing is the end of an era for these two dancers, where they're kind of leaving their childhood dance experience behind, and they're either entering into a more adult professional world with new partners, or they are going to be leaving dance altogether, which is something that happens when you're like 17.
Gotcha. Where do you see the tension, the drama?
I mean, the tension's in the complexity of friendship, especially between two people who have been intimately entwined, not just emotionally, but also their physical bodies have been intertwined for so long, and now they're having to separate from that. And that rich tension of dealing with all of the issues surrounding growing up, but also growing up in a way where you're so aware of your body is definitely a huge part of that tension as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lou, for giving an amazing pitch. All right. So our next pitcher, VP Anderson. I'm going to read an excerpt that VP sent in. So this is in regards to their favorite movie or show that inspired them to write. So when I was 11, my grandma bought me a 25th anniversary edition of The Princess Bride. In my youth and gullibility, I believed it was a real Floridian tale that had been discovered and adapted by lifelong commitment to the Bit Hall of Famer William Goldman. When I eventually learned that Goldman had written the story and pretended to abridge it, and then later wrote the script for the film that I was also obsessed with, it absolutely blew my tiny mind. This was when I experienced my first sucked into a bagel moment and realized every story was endless possibilities to reach people differently in different formats, and each version is someone's favorite for a different reason. As a former journalist and podcast producer, current novelist, graphic novelist, and aspiring screenwriter who is both prolific and allergic to dire sincerity, I credit Goldman's wry hubris and my own munchness with the shamefulness pursuit of story in all forms that has become my life's driving mission. So that is from VP Anderson.
Okay, no worries. So I don't know if you already mentioned the project, so just in case, this is a 1-hour comedy series called Scary Godmothers. The quickest way for me to describe the vibe of the show to you is The Princess Bride meets Schitt's Creek. That's the vibe. Structurally speaking, though, season 1 is basically 3 men and a baby with 3 queer women who just happen to be witches, set in a kingdom very similar to Duloc from Shrek. So that's like the big picture. I don't have a ton of time, so I'm just going to jump into introducing the Godmothers, the main characters to you, since this is an ensemble comedy. The first witch is Minerva Morbidden. She is a pyrotechnic diva, half dragon. Picture Maleficent meets Rebecca from Ted Lasso. She's kind of a bitch, knows it, is fine with it. May or may not be in a BDSM relationship with her shape-shifting familiar. That's kind of a running joke throughout the series. And she, when she discovers she's not been invited to the royal wedding, loses her shit and just threatens to level the kingdom in a fit of pique. That's kind of her thing. Our second literal fairy godmother in this case is Andromeda Applebottom, who is an adorable winged fae. She owns the local bakery and gingerbread house. Her biggest issue currently is that the local kids won't stop nibbling on her house, which is very annoying. Her power is that she can control emotions through food, which makes her very useful to the locals, but also dangerous to them. She has kind of a will they won't they going with the local blacksmith, who's like a hot single dad type. But also she and Minerva are sworn enemies. They've got beef going back like a century. Our third godmother, her name is Ruby Rind, is a time-traveling witch from future Brooklyn. She has magical tattoos, a PhD in chemistry, and also a master's in gender studies. She ends up in Brightmare, our kingdom, by basically trying to break a family curse and ends up getting stuck there. So these 3 are thrown together very much in a found family, forced family, if you will, situation. And at the end of the pilot, these 3 rejects are handed a whole baby. So at its heart, Scary Godmothers is about basically unpacking and decolonizing our ideas of family and community with a kind of comedic bent. But on its face, I think the tagline for this show would best be said as the story of 3 bitches who live happily ever after eventually. That's probably about 2 minutes, but happy to answer any other questions if there's something I missed.
Thank you, VP. That was amazing and hilarious. Thank you so much. Feedback from anyone?
I just have a question. What do you think the engine of the show is that makes it an hour long versus a half hour?
I'm glad you asked that. I think it could be a half hour. The biggest thing that makes for me as a writer, I do a lot of like world building on the page in the early developmental that I could probably pull back on. I do feel like for streaming, it could really fit really well in like a 45-minute space. But ultimately, that's one of those things that it doesn't absolutely have to be an hour. And I know that that's something you're not supposed to really say because it sounds wishy-washy, but it could be both. It's just about whether we want to break into more of the family dynamics or not.
Yeah, great job. I think I got the tone and the vibe of the show off the top, which is always helpful to know. I think my question is sort of who or what you see as the major sort of antagonist, or what's driving that plot throughout the season. Is it the tension between them, or is there some external force?
Oh, absolutely. And if I had more time, I'd go into it. Basically, this is a kingdom in the process of being gentrified after it's been colonized by like chainmail wearing dude bro frat guys. So the new king, his name is literally King Rad. He'd be played by like a Glenn Powell, someone who can elevate douchebaggery to just an art form. And basically the premise, the overall is that the day of the royal wedding is the first episode, and they're taking over and they're gentrifying and they're about to kick out all magical beings. So these 3 witches make a deal for the firstborn royal, and then they end up getting stuck together, have co-parents, and basically if they screw up, they're 86 along with all other magical creatures. So there's kind of a timeliness to it as far as ostracizing and othering any type of marginalized magical people. It's obviously a very obvious allegory for queerness, and so yeah, there's a lot happening, but I wanted it to be very scalable and have a scope that is really insular but also can be expanded upon.
I mean, I actually had the pleasure to interview and meet William Goldman, and he's actually why I became a screenwriter.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was an interview I did for a film, and a lot of the times he would look at the film he was doing, such as like All the President's Men, and it was about power. For him, Princess Bride was about love and its different sort of manifestations and how it could change people. So what is yours about? Is it family? Because that's what I was trying to get out. It almost felt like Modern Family, but set in a fairy tale sort of world.
That would be fair if it was multicam for sure. And I thought about that too with like kind of medievally vibe. But one of the things I love the most about Goldman is his kind of tongue in cheek. I don't know if that was mentioned in, I wrote way too long of an intro, but like the parenthetical digressions and his kind of wry asides. Me as a queer person who has my biological family, as we said, you know, is kind of not I'm not a part of that anymore. And I have queer found family, which a lot of queer people have in common, where it's like we call it our logical family. It's the family that you choose. And so essentially, this is a story about people who are othered, who don't really feel like they belong with each other, even realizing that being othered also makes you in a community of others. And that's a place that you can find strength and beauty and love. It sounds cheesy, I'm getting a little emo now, but essentially it's about, you know, in times when the world is kind of casting you out, how can you build a community? Another really good example is like Rebecca Solnit's Paradise Built in Hell. It's kind of like that's one of my main inspirations. It's kind of teaching people how to see family and home as something that you choose and not necessarily something you're born with.
Gotcha, thanks.
No problem. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to answer questions because everyone else is like, they didn't ask me anything. So that's my bad.
No worries. Thank you so much, VP, for doing a great pitch.
Thank you.
Right.
I really appreciate your time.
All right, bye. Okay, let's see here. I'll introduce the next pitcher. It's Alexander Chard. 3 things that excites Alexander about being a writer is Alexander loves the intimacy of embarking on a journey with the characters and discovering their story with them. Alexander loves the problem-solving aspect and trying to unlock the potential of a story and intentions. And finally, they get excited when someone connects deeply with their writing and plugs in right to the heart of their intentions. That's a feeling that Alexander wants to bottle when they capture it. So take it away, Alexander.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alex. I am calling from Queenstown Airport today, so in New Zealand. So I hope you can all hear me. If there's any loud announcements, which there just was, I'll make sure to take a pause and let that finish. So today I'll be presenting my pitch for my feature film, Monsters Are Real. So growing up in Indonesia, I was surrounded by and imbued with stories of ghosts, spirits, gods and goddesses, and ancestral guardians. I took a lot of comfort in these stories and the knowledge that I had these unseen guides helping me navigate through life. However, after a series of tragic events affected my family, culminating in my mother's hospitalization with clinical depression when I was on my 12th birthday, that illusion of comfort was suddenly shattered, and it felt like there were darker forces guiding my family and particularly my mum. As a kid, I could understand what her depression was, but I would constantly ask myself, what can I do to ease my mother's pain? Monsters Are Real is the story of a 12-year-old mixed Indonesian boy called Adam and his mother, Betty. Struggling to grasp her mental illness and hospitalization, bullied at school, dealing with an emotionally absent father, one day Adam decides to skip school and be with his mom. He tells her of his wish to vanquish the demons that plague her, and in a moment of a tender embrace, he manifests them into reality. Now mother and son must begin conquering these demons one by one. And with each new demon and creature, a new part of her illness is revealed. Her anger, her shame, her guilt, her grief are all manifested into creatures of Indonesian folklore and spiritualism. Eventually, we learned that the heartache at the center of this fractured family was the loss of Apologies. I'm so sorry.
We can actually
Right,
really
I was
hear
about
it.
to say-
You can keep going.
Yeah, you
Okay,
can
cool.
go- we can barely hear it.
Okay, great. Eventually we learned that the heartache at the center of this fractured family was the loss of Adam's older sister, who mysteriously drowned in the sea. So Adam and Betty eventually return to the ocean, where they are confronted by the goddess of the South Sea, Nirorokidul. And it is in this moment, in this final confrontation, that mother and son realize that the demons that plague Betty are not there to be destroyed or conquered, but that they are in fact a part of her whole being, to be loved, to be nurtured, and to be held. And from this, Adam and Betty find forgiveness, find grace. This is a story that's very specific in its use of Indonesian folklore, but universal in its exploration of mental health. It's A Monster Calls meets Everything Everywhere All at Once meets The Never-Ending Story. And as I sit here in Queenstown Airport, having lived through so much of Adam's story, I can tell you that I take comfort knowing that my ancestral guardians still lift me from the darkness and stand with me in the light. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Wants to give feedback?
Yeah, I really like that. I loved how you just told us a story. At the end of the day, you just walked us through a story. We got your comps. We understood your tone very well. You pulled us in. I liked it. I liked it a lot. Great job.
Thank you.
I also really liked it. It made me a little emotional actually, because I grew up with a mom who had like very severe depression as well. And it was not something I understood as a kid. And so I think that that is something that is really missing from family and children's film and television. So you're telling a story that is would touch a lot of people, both children now and people who need healing from those experiences and are adults. So the pitch was great, but also like, I think that you found a niche in storytelling that nobody's really hitting right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I loved the like it felt very universal, and yet there was a real specificity of culture, which I definitely understood and you conveyed very clearly, and it was great.
Thank you.
Hey, in terms of the story, I mean, do you see it more sort of like, you gave some comps there, so I'm just wondering, is it more sort of like, because I hear monsters, and I think a lot of people, when you go in for the pitch, will hear monsters. Where does that go? I mean, are there monsters, or is depression the monster? Are there monsters we're going to see?
Yeah,
it's sort of. I'm just wondering, is this like more the Babadook, which is a great sort of in that area where you're from, New Zealand, Australia, or BFG, which also dealt with sort of larger issues. I'm just trying to figure out what we're going to be.
Yeah, so Babadook is definitely a thematic reference as far as that kind of manifestation of grief. I think it would lean less in the like there will be horror elements, but I think it would lean slightly more towards fantasy with sort of creatures of horror. But you know, I would imagine this would still sit in like a PG-13 type story. I'd really want this to be universal and to connect, with kids as well as adults.
Okay, yeah, because I was just wondering, when I hear monsters and it's a very tough subject, it's a fine line, sort of, you know, Babadook, which is very intense and dealing with her personal issues, and then there's some other things, BFG, that deal with it as well. So it seems more in terms of the BFG and that sort of realm. But you will be seeing creatures that's sort of in your mind, sort of a CGI sort of element and so forth.
Yeah, I could see some being CGI. Some I think would just be, in my mind, I would see as practical effects, because a lot of sort of Indonesian folklore creatures are are representative of people. So I feel like you could use prosthetics and makeup and make it practical and make it even more tangible for some of them. The last goddess, like the sea goddess, I think that would be a big kind of special effects type creature. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm asking these questions because I come at it as sort of producing as well and sort of thinking, you know, in terms of what would be needed and so forth. So that's why I was asking.
I really enjoyed it, and I thought you did a really good job of walking the fine line between, I mean, you personalized this story so well, but you took pains to show that it's universal and it's, I don't know, in its presentation and things it dives into. So I really enjoyed it, and I loved how you personalized it. It just, I could tell that this is a truly personal story for you. So this is great.
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Alex. Amazing.
Great,
pitch.
thanks everyone, and thanks for bearing.
Okay, so introducing our next pitcher, Christian Holiday. 3 things that excites Christian about being a writer is endless possibilities, hearing their words reimagined, and inspiration can happen anywhere. So, Christian, you can take it away.
All right. My name's Christian Holiday. I grew up on a ranch as a preacher's son, and I've often wondered if Jesus was walking the earth today, how would his story or the stories around him unfold? Testaments is a modern day dramatic series that tells the stories of the New Testament using characters that have never been fully explored in TV or film. Each episode takes place in modern day times and told through modern eyes and language, much like Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, using the current world as its settings. There's so many events in the Bible that are well known, from Peter denying Christ to Jesus turning water to wine, Judas's betrayal, and many, many more. However, the dialogue and the characters that connect these events are virtually unknown. What did Peter do after he denied Christ? Where did he run? What exactly turned Judas? Was he really this evil guy? Or who were the kids that helped Jesus when he turned water to wine? So in Testaments, you'll have both good and evil, have moments of victory as main characters cross paths into several episodes. However, these characters have no specific details from the Bible, so we will have complete creative freedom to tell the story however we want, as long as we connect some dots. For instance, the soldier whose ear was cut off by Peter when Jesus was being arrested. All right, could you imagine you're the security guy or gal and your ear gets lopped off by some religious fanatical nut job, only to get put back on by this guy's leader, and it works fine, and maybe it's healed. Maybe you were deaf in it before this all went down, and now you're completely healed, so it's a miracle within a miracle. Or how about from the time Jesus was put on trial, where did Peter go? Bible mentions nothing about it. What was his story after he denied Christ 3 times? Did he attempt suicide, running from the police, politicians? Maybe he hunted down and killed or murdered Judas. All kinds of things could have happened. End of the day, the Bible is the most sold book of all time. The story of Christ is known, or the story of Christ and all these mini stories around him is known to all. But these stories, my story will not connect or tell a story like Christ has been told so many times before, but it's going to open up new genres and through women, men, children, all races, all ethnicities, all set in current times and cities and current politics, economies, and more. And that's about it. I think I got close to 2 minutes there, so I don't know if I got everything.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christian.
All right, no problem.
All right, any feedback for Christian?
I have a quick
sorry.
question. Oh yeah, no, just quickly. So is this do you see it as an anthology where sort of all the episodes are sort of different stories, or is there sort of a series like connection through line?
Yeah, they're all different stories with a brief timeline where moments will cross. Very, very brief, but they all can stand alone independently.
Good to know.
What would your log line be? Just give me your log line. How do you pitch this to somebody in 2 lines?
The untold stories of the New Testament in modern times.
Yeah, I think you need to refine that because, it just sort of, what you just told me, I wouldn't know if that's a series or not. I think, and that's what I was trying to figure out too. Like, is this a series where it's one through line, or is it an anthology? I just think I would try to focus it more in terms of what it is. It's sort of, you gave me a lot of great visual cues as to, security guard with his ear being chopped off and so forth. But what is this? It's sort of, and where is it set? Is it set in the States? Is it set in Europe? Is it set in a small town in the Midwest? It's sort of, or are we jumping around for all over? It's sort of, I think you want to try to get this focused if you can.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Because where is it being set in one location? Is it?
Yeah, I have it set primarily out on the West Coast, all the way from Las Vegas to LA, up to Bakersfield and San Diego, but primarily out on the West Coast.
And why would that be?
I don't know. When I started writing, I just started seeing the streets of LA, and I guess I'm familiar with it. Just the desert terrain, maybe that has some biblical Israel type of visual similarities to it.
Yeah.
That no real particular reason why. That's just where it's placed.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think you're good at, like, you created that macro world for us and understanding kind of that big of like, okay, modern tellings of the New Testament. But what I think we need is that micro viewing of like, what are we going to see in the pilot? How are we going to tangibly see these stories unfold in a modern telling? I love your world that you've built, and I love your idea of taking these different stories and kind of linking them together with loose bullet points. But I think what we're looking for is just more of the specifics of how we're going to see this actually executed on the page.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
I thought it was really fascinating. Also, sorry, there's a truck outside, but I thought it was really fascinating, especially as someone who is an ex-Catholic and hasn't really engaged with the Bible very much. I would watch it. My question, I guess, for you, or something that you should put in if you do this pitch again, is your personal connection to the story. Like, what makes you the right person to tell this? Because like you said, the Bible is a best-selling novel, or not novel, the best-selling book of all time. And anybody, especially anybody who has a Christian background, could supposedly tell the story. So what makes you the expert, and why that story is going to be the best in your hands?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Christian.
Okay, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, bye. Okay, so our final pitcher of the night is Eric Giancola. 10 words that describes Eric is energetic, eccentric, enthusiastic, irreverent, determined, empathetic, mischievous, curious, creative, and collaborative. So take it away, Eric.
Okay, hello. I'm Eric Giancola, and today I want to tell you about my series, The Understudy. So working as an actor and director on Broadway both has enriched me creatively beyond measure, but also sterilized all emotional nerve endings. The work is just incredibly exhausting, balancing personal life virtually impossible, and the people are famously eccentric and egotistical. So I wrote this series as a culmination of those years, a story of scene work, stretching, and sarcasm from backstage and beyond, with a healthy dose of offbeat absurdist imagination. The Understudy is a half-hour serial dark character comedy that follows Marie Albellario, an anxious, people-pleasing Broadway understudy fed up with the biz and her career trajectory, who, after having her big break sabotaged by another more malicious actress, prepares to abandon her dream forever, until a chance encounter with her idol, iconic and eccentric Broadway legend Lynette Streeter inspires renewed confidence and creative commitment, and maybe a little taste for revenge. It's like Smash and Barry heading on stage arm in arm for a top hat, soft shoe, and a warm spotlight. A darkly comedic romp along those thinly drawn lines between narcissism and ambition, set against the backdrop of a Broadway musical where an oddly paradoxical mix of confidence and insecurity prevails, and status is measured in high kicks and high belts. So as the story unfolds, Lynette pushes Marie to reclaim her lost opportunities at all costs. But when things go inevitably awry, Lynette's tactics get decidedly more strange and sinister. And in the aftermath of a heightened reality musical number turned accidental murder, we realize there is definitely something off about Lynette. She might not be real. So The Understudy is an offbeat, irreverent story of a woman pushed to the brink who unlocks her inner diva, allowing her to finally stand up to and rid herself of the people who've been holding her down, becoming more and more resolute to get what she deserves, even if it means she has to kickball murder a bit along the way. The only problem is that her idol and mentor, Lynette Streeter, is actually a figment of Marie's imagination, a manifestation of this explosive, fuckless alter ego she's kept hidden inside. And her arrival will signal a move toward professional success, but also set in motion the destruction of her personal life as she knows it. That's The Understudy.
Great job, Eric. Thank you. All right. Anyone
Thank you.
has feedback for Eric?
Yeah.
Look, oh, sorry.
Oh, you go ahead.
I think a look at Broadway and the inner machinations and sort of getting a show on sort of launched from everything from the financiers to sort of like being the understudy, wanting the lead role. I mean, just seeing all the drama that's gone on with Leah Michelle and Funny Girl and so forth. I think it's a great idea. So sort of like whether it's Nashville or these types of things do really well. And I think people are fascinated by it, and you really turn up the sort of the drama and the sort of evilness going behind it. I think maybe even focusing that a little more. I mean, you kind of threw me with the figment of the imagination because then it took it to a different place for me, but something in this vein, I think you have something here, because I think people would be fascinated to watch something like this with all the evil going on behind a Broadway show and how it's launched.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought you had great energy. I love the world that you've set up, and the idea I think is fantastic. I loved the line "kickball murder." That'll stay with me and make me remember this pitch.
Yes.
So great job. Quick question: when do we find out about her mentor being a figment of her imagination? Where at? And I'm assuming like the first season. Is it like mid-season, at the end? Where do you see that happening?
So as it stands, as an audience, we find out at the end of the pilot, but she doesn't
Okay.
find out until much, much later. In fact, as it stands, how I've sort of sketched it out, she doesn't ever believe it. She lives in, she stays in that reality, but other people find out along the way, sort of at the midpoint, and at the end, there's a big culmination of people trying to break her out of it, but she never believes it.
Very cool. I got like Black Swan vibes from that aspect.
Yeah,
of it,
yeah,
so.
totally.
Yeah, awesome, great job.
I agree. You were super charismatic. And as a, oh my gosh, this truck, as a theater kid, I related to it super hard. I also cackled at Kickball Murder. My one suggestion, again, like in the event that you get to pitch this again, would be to talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that aspiring Broadway actors go through, because I don't know that that's something most people know, even the execs you may be pitching to, like they're so into TV film that they don't really, may not even know much about Broadway. So paint that picture a little bit more for us, some of what she's up against, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Okay, great job, Eric. Thank you so much for your pitch.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Thank you all so much for sharing those pitches with us. They were all absolutely fantastic. And, you know, it's extremely hard to pitch even when you have all the time in the world, but I think doing it under 2 minutes is something I would not wish on my worst enemy. And you all did an excellent job. And so we have deliberated and have come to our 3 winners. So there's a grand prize winner, a first runner-up, and a second runner-up. So I will announce those backwards. So our second runner-up is Alex for Monsters Are Real.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope you make it to your destination and to celebrate with whoever you're gonna go see. Then our first runner-up is Faye for Mary Redacted.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You are very, very welcome. And then that leaves our grand prize winner as the wonderful, amazing Nicole. Yay. You're muted. We want to hear your voice.
I froze. Sorry.
You won.
Oh, awesome.
So congratulations to all of you. I hope you're all super proud. And we, again, are so grateful to have gotten to hear those pitches and appreciate all your storytelling.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a great opportunity. Thank you kindly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for all your feedback.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. And congratulations, Faye, Nicole, and Alex. Congrats on winning. And thank you so much to our judges for hanging in there while we were doing this pitch session. And thank you so much for your wonderful feedback. And thank you, Kyra, for giving a great announcement. That was wonderful. And hopefully, you know, we do this again and meet us back here for a virtual pitch session with our next session coming in a few months, actually. And thank you and have a great night, everyone.